Hi, and welcome to Objective 6 in Chapter 30. And here we're going to talk about how inflation is like a tax. And basically, this is the inflation fallacy. When taxes increase, is that harmful or helpful to you? And so let's go ahead and I'll share my slides with you. Okay. So we're going to take a look at looking at low inflation versus high inflation in tax scenarios. That's really what we're about in this particular section. Okay, so remember that the government raises its revenue, meaning government spending that we talked about clear back in chapter 23. Now, economists think of it as a tax on everyone who's holding money. Okay? Why? Because when the money supply increases, the value of a dollar decreases, takes you more physical dollars to buy the same amount, and basically what happens is an increase in the price level. Because we now know this, let's take a look at how taxes kind of influence both our savings and our borrowing. So if you deposit $1,000 in the bank for 1 year, the first case is the inflation rate is 0, nominal interest rate is 10%. Second case, inflation is 10%, nominal interest rate is 20. In which case does the real value of your deposit grow the most? And then we're going to assume a tax rate of 25%, slightly less than capital gains tax. And then in which case do you pay the most taxes? Then we're going to compute the after-tax nominal interest rate, subtract off inflation to get the after-tax real interest rate in both cases. Now, students tend to glaze over here and C because it seems extremely difficult. It's not. So we're going to go ahead and work through an example. Okay, so here's our question, and we'll just look at A at this point. One thing to remember is that the nominal interest rate is equal to the real rate plus inflation. And I'm just using these little i's as interest. Okay, so that's something important to remember that we've talked about throughout the class. Okay, so let's look at case 1. In case 1, our nominal interest rate is 10%. So 10%. Our inflation here is 0. So obviously our real interest rate is going to be 10%. Okay? So in case 1, our interest rate is 10%. Now, in case 2, our nominal interest rate is 20%. That seems like it's more, but is it really? So the nominal interest rate here will be 20%. The real rate of interest is what we're going to calculate. And the inflation rate here is 10%. So plus 10%. So that must mean that our real interest rate is 10%, right? So we're actually earning the same real rate of interest in case 1 as we are in case 2. So did they grow the most? They're the same. Okay. All right, so here's our second question. Assume the tax rate is 25%. In which case do you pay the most taxes? So I'm going to go ahead and take C as well. So the first thing we want to know how to do is to compute the after-tax nominal interest rate. And this kind of tells us how to do it. So we want to figure out what is the after-tax. And after-tax means everything you get to keep. So after tax is going to equal 1 minus your tax rate. So if we subtract 1 minus 0.25, our after-tax rate is 0.75, okay? Because we get to keep 75% of everything that we have. Okay, so we're going to compute the after-tax Nominal interest rate. Okay, so here we'll take case one. And again, we're going to say, okay, if we have a nominal interest rate of 10%, okay, we get to keep 75% of that. So 7.5% is what our after-tax rate will be. And then we subtract inflation. So here, okay, inflation is 0, so our after-tax real interest rate is 7.5%. Okay, that's the answer to case one. Now let's do case two. Case two, we're earning 20% because that's our nominal interest rate. We're going to take that by 0.75 and we end up with 14 or 15. I think it's 15. This is where when you've had a stroke, doing simple math in your head sometimes, especially when you're recording and doing all this other stuff, it's never fun. Yeah, it is 15. I thought it was, but double check. 15%. Now what we're going to do is to subtract inflation. And inflation in case two was 10%. So our after-tax real interest rate in case two is 5%. So essentially what I did was, the first thing is to compute the after-tax rate. The second thing is to take your nominal interest rate times that after-tax rate. The third thing is to subtract off inflation. And then that will give you the after-tax rate, after-tax real interest rate. Okay. So there's an example of how to do this. Now, which one did you earn the most? Again, most people, this is the inflation fallacy. When they walk into the bank, they might be thinking, ooh, 20%, you're paying me way more than the bank down the street. But when in fact you're earning less because of inflation, you're earning the same real rate, but it's the after-tax rate which is different. So it's kind of interesting, when the Fed increases the money supply, you're going to pay more taxes on your savings. So that's why it becomes difficult. And again, most people do not understand this unless they've had an economics course. Let me go ahead and jump back into my slides. I really think that was our last little thing there, but I can't remember for sure. Okay, so let's just double check our answers there. Okay, in both cases, 10%. Good. In which case do you pay the most taxes? Definitely in case two, you pay more taxes, right? $200 versus $100, so you're paying twice as much taxes. And then the after-tax nominal interest rate. And again, that is lower in case two than it is in case one. So inflation raises nominal interest rates. This is the Fisher effect. It basically says that stuff which is priced in dollars is susceptible to inflation, but real stuff is not. And then it increases savers' burdens to borrowers. Okay. and then it lowers the after-tax rate. Who wins in inflation? Borrowers, because they're paying back money in with cheaper dollars because the value of that dollar has decreased. So now they're paying it back, the loan back in cheaper dollars. So they actually do turn out well in inflationary times. All right, thanks for your time and attention. See you back in the next objective.